In this video, I'm going to introduce you to Django models. Models are basically used to model the data that's in your database. Basically, they denote what tables go in your database. After the data is modeled, I'm going to insert some new data into from the admin console, and then we're going to display it in a view in an actual template. So I'm going to query the data in the view and then display it in a template. What I have in front of me here is the Django documentation on the models page, on the fields page. This is where different data types basically that you can add as models. I'm gonna refer back to this in just a second when we actually build the model. So I'm going to come down into our project. I'm going to go into the models.py file inside of personal, and here's where we're going to create our first model. So first of all, we need to define it. So I'm going to write class. Class is a keyword. This model is going to be called question. And just keep in mind that this isn't actually going to be a model that's going to be here by the end of the project. This is basically just for demonstration. I still encourage you to copy it though, because it will, even if you comment it out later, it's still going to help you because it'll be a good reference point. So I've created a class, or I'm creating a table in the database named question. I have to pass model. I think it's actually models.model. So I'm using this models import. I'm gonna type 5 tabs. Whoops. I'm gonna write 5 tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is just something I like to do because if you have a lot of fields in your tables, this can help keep it it'll look a lot better basically. So you don't have to do this. You don't have to do those tabs. There's no point in me doing this. I just do it for organization and helping it look better, because you can imagine if there was a whole bunch of fields here, they could all have different lengths, and having the equal sign line up just makes it look better, I think. So do that if you like, or don't. It's okay. Now I want to tell Django what type of field this is going to be. So I'm telling Django that I want this to be something called a character field, and a character field has a required attribute named max length. So if you define something as a character field, you have to give it the max length attribute and tell it what the max length is. So I'm saying I've created a field named title. It's going to be a character field, and its max length is going to be 60 characters. The next thing is I'm going to create a question field. So once again, I'm lining up these equal signs so they look nice. This will be a text field, and this will have a max length of I'll just say 400 characters. There isn't, you don't have to set a max length for a text field, but I don't think anyone should have a question that's more than 400 characters. For whatever reason, it depends on your project. Next, I'm going to create something called a priority field, and this one will also be a character field. So character field with a max length of 1. It's only going to be a single character, and I'm going to add another attribute named choices, and I'm going to leave that blank for right now. So now what do I want these choices to be? Well, I'm actually going to define a constant up here. I'm going to call this constant priority, if I spelled that right, hopefully. I'm going to set it equal to this is going to be something called a tuple. Actually, you know what? I was going to show you guys how to do a tuple, which is a data structure with Python, but I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to use a plain old list. So we're going to have a low priority, we're going to have a medium priority, and we're going to have a high priority. A tuple is, I think it's not like a very intuitive data structure. It's kind of like a hash map in Java or Android, if you're familiar with that. So I'm just going to use a list. So I'm setting a list of choices and setting that equal to priority. Now, the next, I want to come down here and create a function inside of this model, and I'm going to give it underscore. This is going to seem strange to you. This is a Python thing, so just kind of bear with me. Define string, and I want to return self.title. So what this is going to do is basically, if I ever query a question object from the database and I just print it to the screen, this is telling it what the default field should It's like the toString method in Android. If you have a data class and you write toString on that object, what gets printed out? That's basically the same thing right here. It's like, think of it as the toString method, I guess. That's probably the best way to put it. Next, I'm going to define a meta attribute. I think you call it a meta attribute. I'm going to have a field named verbose name. This is going to seem strange to you. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you the admin, and then I'm going to come back and do this. So I'm commenting that out. So I'm going to save this, and there is our first model. It's a question object. It has 3 parameters, 3 fields: title, question, and priority. character field, text field, character field. If I go back to the documentation, you can see a list of the different types of the different field types. So we used character field, and we also used text field. So there's all kinds of different data types. We're going to explore a bunch of them in the course. Just kind of wanted to point out where you can see the different fields from this URL. These field options right here are some different options that you can pass to the different fields. So if I go to character field, for example, you see that the input says max length. That's a required attribute or a required field. But then it says star options. Well, what are these options? These options are those field options right here. So any of these basically can be passed to the character field, and we are making use of the choices. So if I look at our code again, you see that I'm passing choices, and I'm passing a list of different choices for the priority. It can be low, medium, or high. So now that we have this data model, now I need a way to insert this into the database. Sorry, basically a way to create that database table. So I need to come over to our console, and I need to write Python manage.py make migrations. So basically what make migrations, you can't, it must be an iterable. So actually you can't add a list here. You have to use a tuple. So that's my fault. So we have to actually create a tuple here. So what I'll do is write H, this will be high. Just think of this as a hash map, like I said. So they're like key value pairs. M for medium, I thought I could just do a list, but I can't. And then comma, and this one will be L for low. So that should be good. Now I need to open my console and do something called making migrations. Basically what this is doing is it's like writing a pending transaction to the database. So I call Python manage.py make migrations, and now it says create model question. So it's pendingly, or it's added this question model as a table in the database, but it hasn't committed those changes yet. So what I want to do to commit them is I write migrate. So Python manage.py migrate. What that does is it applies all of the pending changes. So it says applying personal, that's the name of the migration, which you can find inside the migrations file right there. And that will then create this question table into the database. So now if I go back to my console and Python manage.py run server, and I go to our server, so I'm opening that up. I'm at the admin console. If I refresh this, there's no question there. There's no question table added. That's because I forgot something. We need to go into admin, and we need to import that new model. So from personal.models import question. That's the name of the model. So right here, the name of the model is question. I'm importing that, and I'm just writing admin.site.register and then passing that model. So basically what that's doing is as I'm telling Django that I have a new table that I've created and I want it to be displayed in the admin console. So it's inside this admin.py file. Now if I go back to the admin and I refresh it, there is our questions. So if I click this, I can then create new questions. So if I add a question, the title will be like, I don't know, null pointer exception. I got a null pointer. Help. Give it a priority of high and click save. So that will then insert that new question into the database. So if I go to questions, you can see that null pointer exception is there. I can create another one. Let's say array index out of bounds. I got an array out of bounds exception. Please help me with my homework. Because that's what people always ask me. So now I'm going to try and help this guy with his homework. Clicking save, and there's those two questions that are added to the database. Now I want to go back to the project and reflect on something that I was trying to do earlier. So before I was writing this kind of meta thing inside of the question object. So there's two attributes that I want to add to meta: verbose name and verbose name plural. And before I fill these out, I want to go back to the server, and I want to go back to personal. Actually, let's go back to home. Notice that this says personal. This says questions, plural. This is a plural word, questions. And inside here, it just says questions. So that's non-plural. Now, what I'm doing with this meta information is I want to change what this says, and I want to change what that says. So I'll say the verbose name is, I'll just say a question, or I'll say the question, And then the plural name, it will be, I don't know, let's say people's questions. People's questions, sure. If I save that and I go back to the server, go back to home, notice this is now people's questions, and the question is now here instead of just question. So that's what the metadata does. The plural version gets put on the table, I guess like the table name, and then this is for each individual row in the table. So if you look again, these are the individual rows. If I go back to home, it says this is the table name, which is people's questions. Now that might not seem significant to you, but later when you have like different names for your tables, this might come in handy to give more meaningful names to your database tables. So now that we actually have some data, we have a new table created and we have some data. Now I want to show you how to query that data inside of the view and then pass that to a template. So I'm going to come into our home screen view here and I'm going to write questions. So I'm creating a new variable named questions. I actually have to import the question class. So from personal.models import question. So I'm importing that table and I'm saying questions equals question.objects.all. Basically what that is a select all query. I'm selecting all of the question objects from the database and I want to add that as context. So questions equals questions. Now that's going to get passed as context. Now I'm going to come into home.html. I'm going to change this loop to say for question in questions, because remember that's the list that's being passed to the view, this questions list right here. And it's going to be passed to our snippet, but I want to change the snippet a little bit. So I'm going to go into our body snippet. This needs to be changed to actually value equals question. So I'll save that, go into body snippet, and let's change this. So first of all, let's change this to an H3, and that's going to be the title of the question. So value.title. And then I want to add a line, like a break here, just to kind of separate things. I'm going to put the priority of the question. So two squiggly brackets, value.priority. And then below this H3, I'm going to add a P tag. I'm going to give it some styling, just give it maybe margin left, maybe just 10 pixels. And inside here, I want to do value. Whoops. So value.question. So notice these properties, title, priority, and question. If you go to the admin console and you select one of these objects, you have the title, you have the question, and you have the priority. So I'm selecting each of those individual properties to be displayed. So I'm looping through the questions, passing them each question as the parameter named value to the snippet, and then I'm displaying the title, I'm displaying the priority, and I'm displaying the question. So now if I save everything's saved, and I go back to our project and I go to the home screen, you can see here's like the stuff we had before. Here's the very first entry. Looks like I have a typo because it's not working. Go back to here. I think I forgot a squiggly bracket there. Yeah, I did. So save that. Go back to here, refresh that. We have the title, we have the priority, which is high. We have the actual question itself. Then again, it's looping through the second one. There's the title, and then here is the content. So in general, that's how you create a data model, add a new table to the database, how you then insert data from the admin console, how you query that data inside of the view. I can actually delete all this stuff. We don't need that anymore. So how you query the data, how you pass it to a view. So I'm passing it to home, looping through each question in the questions list that we queried, and then displaying it using a snippet. So that's a general process of how you query everything and how you'll be doing a lot of database work with your Django projects. So I just want to remind you that our end product, the end product that we're building in this course, it's not going to have this question model. I just think that this was a really good example to show you the whole kind of process. We created a model, we inserted some data in the console, we queried the data in the view, and then we displayed that queried data in a template. And now that you've seen this simple example, I want to start building some of the actual models that we're going to be using in the project. Since this website will need to handle user registration, the first real model that we're going to build is a custom user model. So we're going to work on creating the custom user model, registering users, being able to update users, delete users, and query users. And this isn't going to be done just using the admin console. We're going to have a registration screen, just like you have on codingwithmitch.com. So if I was to log out, we're going to have like a registration screen. It's not going to look as nice as this because we're not going to use as much styling, but we're going to have a basic registration. This is the registration screen. We're going to have a login screen, kind of all that basic stuff. So I will see you in that next video.